Okay, so having established the basic setting of industry in ancient China, let's now examine the position of artisans of ancient China. It is recorded in the record of industry in the Rites of Zhou that there were 6 major types of occupations of a state. The classification of occupation is, of course, driven by the way that workers contribute to the people. For example, the job of emperors and princes was to discuss the principles. And they had both the resources to make observations of the society, and they were able to talk about the problems within the government and out there among the people. They would also come up with a set of overall theoretical government principles that guide the country. So this is what they do. And the job of the officials was to understand the principles set by the emperors and the princes and execute them in helping the emperors to govern the country. And of course, there's no fine line between those executing and discussing the principles. It's not the case that those who execute the principles must not participate in the discussion phase, but quite the contrary, they can provide great insight in the discussion. But just in terms of the sheer number of workers of civil service, this division is still a relevant and separate division. The job of artisans, which is our focus today, is all about analyzing the nature of materials and the utilization of materials and turning them into articles and products. The job of merchants, which is something that we will discuss in more detail in the next lecture, lecture 13, involves transporting the goods of different countries and the 4 corners of the world and putting them somewhere for sales or further manufacturing. So essentially, they trade things, right? They trade goods. Now, some of these goods end up as final consumption, and some would need to be processed further before reaching final users. The job of farmers, as stated in the Rite of Zhou, is to use their energy for the increase of wealth from the land. So I think it's quite a precise description, I would say. In modern society, the energy is not only just physical, but also include all the material costs that go into the production of agricultural products. But the ultimate purpose is to increase food sufficiency for the people. And this surely includes food product from the food factories nowadays. And finally, working women. Working women is classified as a separate function of the state. And the job of the women is related to the production of silk and flax products. Now, there are some very important points about this particular arrangement. Now, first of all, in this particular chapter, the Rites of Zhou specifically says that a state has 6 functions and the 100 artisans take up one of them. What does this mean? Well, this means that all of these occupations, including artisans, are ranked equally by the philosophy of Confucians. Although, emperors and princes are placed as the first, it is more out of respect rather than contribution-wise. Because, the state will not run properly if any of these functions is dropped. So from the occupation perspective, all of them are in the laboring class, and no one is personally higher than any other. So as long as a person works for a living, he or she must fulfill one of the 6 functions of a state. So this kind of grouping system is not a caste system, but a division of labor, as we mentioned before. And this is the principle of industrial democracy. Well, of course, only the royal family can occupy the job of emperor. but all the other working groups are open to application, if you like. Now, one may argue that, well, the job of emperor is limited to the royal family, but if we look at the longer horizon of history, an emperor who didn't do his job properly would be overthrown by the people, and a new family would take over. So this taking over and replacement process surely takes a longer time to realize, but with the potential threat of the ending of their career, the emperors had the incentive to do well in their job. Now, a very important notion is that industrial artisans are specifically mentioned, that they fill one of the 6 functions. We know that traditional classics and texts were written with very specific intention. It's not written without a reason. So this shows that the artisans play an extremely important part in the economic functions of a state. Now, another rather notable point about this system is that working women takes an independent occupational category. And of course, in the ancient times, textile and silk work is mainly done manually by women. But because of the importance of clothing industry, working women was given a prominent level of recognition. The way that the Rites of Zhou describes the 6 functions shows that women enjoy a high economic position, and they were classified with the emperor and the princes. Given the fact that most of the other 5 functions were taken by men during ancient China, women formed a separate group from men, and they fulfilled an important function of a state that is comparable to men.